Pennsylvania League of Angling Youth, Spring 2003. Introduction to Amphibians. Written by Walt Dietz. Edited by Art Michaels. Photos by Tom Diaz and Art Michaels. Layout and design by Ron Kuhn. Introduction to Amphibians. They're slippery, slimy critters. Some swim, others hop or crawl. Sometimes you never notice they are around. Other times you hear them all over the place. We're talking about frogs, toads, and salamanders. They might look different from one another, but they all share one thing in common. They are amphibians. What does that mean? They live a double life. Amphibian is a Greek and comes from two words, amphi, which means both, and bios, which means life. It really means living in two ways. Most amphibians start life as an egg in the water or some other moist environment. They hatch into larvae with gills. Eventually, they metamorphose into adults and lose their gills. Of course, there are exceptions. You'll have to read further to learn about more on that. Believe it or not, amphibians are one of our planet's most successful creatures. They've been around for nearly 300 million years. Not bad for such a small and seemingly unnoticed critter. Except for fishes, they are some of the oldest living vertebrates, which are animals with backbones. There was even an age of amphibians, when they dominated the planet for millions of years. So take that, you dinosaurs. No more hype about them. Amphibians are way cooler, and they are here to stay. Not to mention how interesting and important they are in our environment. Let's take a journey into the world of amphibians. Pennsylvania Amphibian Family Tree. In a previous issue of Play, the Introduction to Reptiles, you learned about taxonomy and how it organizes and names living things. Scientists use the same system to classify all animals, including amphibians. Amphibians are grouped by their physical traits, body functions, genetics, and other features. Let's see how good you are at recognizing some traits that may occur in each amphibian family. There are around 38 amphibians that call Pennsylvania their home. Help some of them find their place in the taxonomic tree by using the columns shown for each family's tree limb. Place an X in the color that puts them in the correct place on the tree. On the family tree, starting with Kingdom Animalia. Phylum Chordata, which means spinal cord. Class Amphibian. There are two orders, Chordata, the salamanders, and Salientia, the frogs and toads. The order Chordata, or salamanders, includes several families. Cryptobranchidae, which is the giant salamanders. Family Protidae, which is the mud puppies. Family Plethodontidae, which is the lungless salamanders. Family Amistomidae, which is the mole salamanders. And family Salamandridae, which are the newts. The order Salientia, or frogs and toads, includes several families. Family Palobatidae, which are the spadefoot toads. Family Bufonidae, which are the toads. Family Hylidae, which are the tree frogs. And family Ranidae, which are the true frogs. Try to find which family on the tree the following amphibians belong to: the mud puppy, eastern spadefoot toad, hellbender, and eastern American toad. What is an amphibian? Have you ever wondered what makes an animal an amphibian? Here are some characteristics that can help you tell the difference between amphibians and other animals. Skeleton. Amphibians are some of the oldest living vertebrates. They have an internal skeleton or endoskeleton. Skin. Most amphibians have moist, smooth, and slippery skin. Some secrete mucus through their skin, which makes them slimy. Others have dry, bumpy skin, like toads. One thing that all amphibians have in common is that their skin is scaleless and permeable, that its fluids pass through, such as water. Feet. Amphibians' feet are covered with skin and have no claws. Breathing. Amphibians begin their lives with gills. Some lose their gills before leaving the egg. Most lose them when they reach the adult stage. There are exceptions, like the mud puppies. They keep gills through their entire life. Sometimes a mole salamander will also keep their gills into adulthood. These mole salamanders are called axolotls and never leave the water for their land stage. They are like adults with the features of the larval stage. Most amphibians breathe through lungs after they lose their gills. There are exceptions, like the lungless salamanders. They breathe through skin once they lose their gills. We call this cutaneous respiration, or skin breathing. Body temperature. Amphibians are ectotherms. Some amphibians can adjust their body temperature, but it mostly varies with the temperature of the environment. This condition is completely different from what is found in mammals or birds, which we call endotherms. They are able to generate heat directly and maintain a fairly constant body temperature. Eggs and young. The eggs of amphibians require moisture to survive, unlike the hard-shelled eggs of reptiles and birds. All Pennsylvania frogs and toads deposit their eggs in water. Many Pennsylvania salamanders also deposit their eggs in water. Others may deposit their eggs somewhere on land, under rocks, rotting trees, tree bark, or leaves. All of these areas must retain some moisture for the salamander eggs to survive. Where do amphibians live? You might be surprised to learn that there is probably an amphibian living within walking distance of where you are right now. Amphibians have adapted to survive in many different types of habitats. They can be found in forests, woodlots, meadows, springs, streams, rivers, lakes, ponds, bogs, marshes, swamps, vernal ponds, and even farmland. Sometimes you can guess where a particular amphibian lives just by looking at its adaptations, coloration, physical characteristics, and even behavior. See if you can match the following amphibians to the habitat in which they live as adults. The habitat choices include backyard, forest, spring, stream, or river, wetland, or vernal pond. The amphibian choices include spotted salamander, bullfrog, northern spring salamander, northern leopard frog, eastern hellbender, American toad, and mud puppy. The March migration madness. When you think of migration, you probably envision a flock of geese flying south for the winter. But many other animals also migrate, including amphibians. Many frogs, toads, and salamanders migrate short distances each spring or fall to breed. They often choose vernal ponds in which they lay their eggs. These temporary ponds usually fill with rain and snowmelt each spring, but dry up in the summer. They make great places for amphibian larvae to hatch and grow, since there are few predators living in them. The spotted salamander is one amphibian that migrates from its forest habitat to vernal ponds each spring. It encounters many obstacles along the journey, both natural and man-made. Here's your chance to live the life of a spotted salamander. Think you have the skills to survive your migration journey? For each turn, let each player cast one die. Good luck. On the game board, the following numbers correspond. 1. Oops, you crossed the road and a car ran over your foot. Go back 2 spaces. 2. Look out. A human found you and decided to take you home for a while. Go back 1 space. 3. Oil. Someone left it in the wrong place. take 2 steps back. 4. A worm, food, take 1 step forward. 5. Congratulations, you chose to take the tunnel, possibly saving your life and placing you 4 steps ahead in the game. 6. Look out, another car, take 3 steps back. 7. A beetle, more food for salamanders, take 3 steps forward. 8. Hide in the leaves, skip your turn to hide in the leaves. 9. A car, take 2 steps back until you recover. 10. Skunk, you don't have to worry about the smell. It's the teeth that will harm you when the skunk tries to eat you. 11. Good thinking, you hid in the weeds while an owl flew past. Take 3 steps forward. 12. Water, you need this. Salamanders can't live without it. 13. Look out, a mink almost caught you. Take 2 steps back. 14. Dead end, a log is in your way. Skip your turn. Amphibian acoustics activity. Ever been out on a spring or summer night and heard all sorts of strange animal calls? Some sound like a high-pitched peep, 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 and others sound like a low-pitched juggo rum, juggo rum, juggo rum. Those calls are coming from amphibians. You are right if you guess frogs and toads. They call for different reasons and have several types of calls, including advertisement, aggressiveness, courtship, release, and defensive calls. Most often you will hear them call during their breeding season. How do they do it? A frog or toad will pump air back and forth between its lungs and vocal sac. Air passes over the vocal cords and causes them to vibrate, and out comes a croak. A frog or toad can do this without ever opening its mouth. Scientists have learned that temperature affects when and how often a frog or toad will call. So borrow one of your parents' thermometers, grab this chart, and head outside for some fantastic froggy fun. See if you can guess which frog or toad could be calling based on the temperature, season, and sounds you hear. You should be aware that a fishing license is required by persons 16 and older to catch or take frogs or turtles from the waters of the Commonwealth. There are also creel limits or seasons for certain frogs. Consult the current Pennsylvania Summary of Fishing Regulations and Laws for more information. You should also know that it is illegal to possess certain amphibians because they are endangered or threatened. They include the New Jersey coarse frog and the coastal plain leopard frog, eastern mud salamander, and green salamander. Follow along on this chart. Frogs and toads. Bullfrogs. Temperature range 58 to 78 degrees. The breeding season, May through July. In the call is a deep juggo rum. Spadefoot toad, 40 to 88 degrees. March through September, a nasal wank or wah. Green frog, temperature range 50 to 90 degrees. Breeding season, May through August. The call is a banjo-like plunk or gunk. Spring peeper, temperature range 34 to 74. Breeding season, March through June. Call a high whistle-like peep. Gray tree frog, temperature range 64 to 88. April through August, a loud explosive trill. American toad, temperature range 60 to 78 degrees. Breeding season, March through May. Call high-pitched trill. Please note the temperature ranges given here are taken from southern states and will likely vary from Pennsylvania's temperature ranges. Finally, a helping hand. Frogs, toads, and salamanders are sometimes very popular. Many people find them interesting and like to keep them as pets. If you are really interested in amphibians and want to give them a helping hand, it's best to just leave them in their natural habitat. There's nothing wrong with visiting an amphibian habitat and observing or catching them to look at. Just remember to handle them gently and return them where you found them. After all, they have special needs that are very difficult to duplicate in an aquarium or other container.